This is ArcGIS Online, exploring your data with smart mapping. We appreciate you guys being here. It is 4 o'clock on Thursday. We are literally in the final stretch. I'm proud of everyone in this room for being here.
These are the most dedicated people at the conference.
You guys are excited about maps too, it seems like. Maybe, like a little bit. My name is Lisa Berry. I'm a cartographic product engineer on the ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World team. I make a lot of maps about demographic data.
And I'm Jennifer Bell. I'm also on the Living Atlas team. We sit next to each other at work in Redlands, and we make maps every day. I love making maps about transportation and accessibility and policy maps.
All right, so let's get into it. So in this session, we're going to show you how to explore your data like never before. You don't need to know anything about smart mapping. You don't need to know anything about your data. This exercise is just, we're going to teach you some techniques, tips, and tricks on how to give yourself permission to explore the data. And I'm going to go ahead and hand you that permission right now. I'm going to tell you that all the clicks I do, I give you permission when you get home to go click buttons. So in this session, we will show you what smart mapping is, where to find it, how to use it, so that when you go home, you can go click those buttons. We'll show some examples of what rendering options are available and when you might use each type. And then once you've seen it happen and you see, oh, that's really easy, maybe you'll feel comfortable trying it at home because you realize, hey, this is not so hard. And you'll learn a lot of new things about your data, hopefully, from learning some techniques from here. And we'll try to fit in some tips and tricks as we go on how to make your maps more clear, more beautiful, more meaningful. We're both cartographers, so we like to just throw in little, hey, if you do this little thing, it makes your map a little bit easier to understand. So we'll throw in a few of those as well.
Yeah, so what is smart mapping? Where do you find it? How do you use it? This session we'll talk about how smart mapping is a tool that helps you with your cartography. Not only that, it also helps with data exploration. And so when you add a field when you choose a field, smart mapping looks at your data type or the attributes and suggests ways to visualize your map. And it allows you to make adjustments really easily, and it automatically shows up on the map so you can explore the data that way. And yeah, don't be afraid to try it.
Yeah, and one thing that you'll see is that you actually can learn more about the data because right in the interface is everything you need. It gives you the histogram. By default, it gives you some important numbers, and we'll show you some examples of that. So again, we're going to show you how you can learn about your data quickly and easily. And again, I'm going to go ahead and give you that permission to take 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, to play with the data a few minutes before you make the map. Because sometimes you think, oh, well, I have to make this one map. Well, there may be patterns hidden in your data that if you don't take the time to explore for those 5 minutes, you may never find it. And there may be some treasure map, hidden in your data, and you may not even find it if you don't spend that 5 minutes. So smart mapping makes it really easy to make quick adjustments to your map. And if you don't like what you did, you click cancel. No harm, no foul. Try putting different fields together within the same map. We'll show you some techniques on how to do that. And we really encourage you to go into the options and change it from the default settings. We see a lot of those orange dot maps. We see a lot of the blue maps. And so in this session, we're going to encourage you, click that options button and try things. Try a different color ramp. Try different breakpoints. Just learn more as you go through it. So we like to tell people to try and let the data speak for itself at first. When you're exploring it, your data's actually got a lot of information in it. And a lot of times we'll start with the map on the top left where it's just points. But then you could try making it a heat map. Maybe start to see some density. Or you can do, for example, with points, you can do clustering. That can help emerge some new patterns by simply clicking one button. You may learn something new just by trying clustering. And then you can also map with counts and amounts. And so when you're in the smart mapping interface, you'll actually see this phrase a few times, counts and amounts. That just means it's a numeric value. The value in that field is a number. And you can use size, you can use color to represent numeric values, and you can also use color and size. How many people in this room have made a color and size map before? That's a lot of the room. That makes me really excited. So you guys will see this and go, I know how to do that. But maybe we'll teach you a trick or two on playing with the data a little bit with that.
Yeah, so this is an example of color and size. We've got annual average daily traffic in Florida, and each color represents a different district. And then the size or the width of the line is how many cars are on that road or that freeway on a daily basis. And so that's next.
Oh, and clustering, like I mentioned, it's an option. It's not technically in the smart mapping interface, but it works with smart mapping to hold on to whatever settings you had in the map, and it does help you explore. And so we do consider it kind of an add-on to smart mapping, even though it's not in the exact interface. And so I'm gonna go ahead and just jump into some demos. So give me a second. I'm going to duplicate my screen. All right. So here we are in ArcGIS Online. Oh, did you want to actually see my screen? Let's see here. I've had this happen already this week, so hopefully this fixes it. Aha, all right, we're back in business. So here we are in ArcGIS Online, and tip number one is that I know that Jennifer and I both are impartial to not using the default base map either. So when I'm first making a map, the first thing I like to do is change it to light gray. I know that Jennifer's a dark gray type of person, but I'm the light gray fan, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I explore data on light gray. And one of the reasons this actually does help us explore our data is because it gives us a neutral backdrop. So instead of being distracted by the blues and the greens and the topographic, it just gives us some reference. And that way we're focusing more on the data rather than what's behind it. And so I'm going to get us started immediately by adding a Living Atlas layer. Again, we're on the Living Atlas team, so I always like to encourage people and show people what's in here. I'm going to show a really interesting, valuable layer called the County Health Rankings data. Has anyone heard of this data? All right, so this is a layer that is jam-packed full of information about all the counties in the United States. And this layer is immensely valuable to help counties see how they're doing along many different health-related factors. And that may have to do with socioeconomic, it may have to do with health, but all we did was add this, and now we have data in our map, but we don't know what's in here. We want to start exploring, so here's where I'm going to give you the permission to push this button right here. This is how you access smart mapping. This is the Change Style button. This is how you get into the smart mapping interface. And it even guides you through this experience. Choose an attribute to show. So by default, we're just seeing location, but I'm gonna go ahead and see what's in this data. So immediately, I can see that there is a long list of fields. So I could spend the time to look at all these, but for the sake of keeping this under an hour, I'm gonna go ahead and just choose a few. So I like to, when I'm mapping demographics, start with mapping percent values, because when you map totals, they start to look all like total population maps, because it turns out there's more people in cities than there are in rural, so all the maps start to look the same. So I gravitate towards starting with those percent values, and so this layer actually is jam-packed full of percentage values. So I can immediately click on one of these to learn something new. If I click percent Asian, I want to learn something new about where the Asian population is in the United States. Okay, I see some city patterns. I see Chicago, I see Dallas, a lot of them on the West Coast, especially in Southern California, Central California. I didn't know this before. This is interesting. We just did our first exploration. Whew, we are rolling. Let's try another one. Let's see, where is the non-Hispanic African American population in the United States? All right, we immediately just saw a new pattern. All we did was click one button and we immediately learned something new. This is that 5-minute exploration process, like I mentioned. Okay, I just learned something new about this. Let's go ahead and try one more. Let's try Hispanic population. We let it do its magic and wow, okay, we've learned something new. And so what you'll see, what's happening here is that I chose numeric values, and smart mapping only gave me options applicable to that data type. So I chose a percent, and it's giving me counts and amounts, again, color and size. So this is my option. So I could be happy that with this map, wow, I'm learning something new, but again, push the button, click the options, go beyond the defaults. Click in here, and this opens a world of new information that could be learned about this data. We're immediately seeing the min and the max, okay. 96% is max. The average right here is 9% by counties. By default, smart mapping gives you plus or minus 1 standard deviation around the mean. So you know that when you click on this map, smart mapping did you a favor. It said, I'm only gonna represent the significant values with those strongest colors. And so that's why it is such a great tool for data exploration, is the fact that we immediately are seeing a significant pattern. This isn't just, oh, I did quantiles and it gave me a map and it's there. It's no, this is, those darkest colors are significant in this data set. But you know, I don't think blue is working, and so I'm gonna go ahead and click this button and explore some more. I'd really like to explore what colors are available. Maybe I want this map to be purple. I like purple, it's a good color. Anyone who's been in my other sessions, you know I choose this ramp every time. And this immediately is telling us a really interesting, clear story. We spent just a few minutes, clicked maybe 3 or 4 buttons, and this map is already really valuable in telling us something new. There's this cool trick in smart mapping called themes. This one by default is showing high to low, where the lowest values are that yellow color, highest values are purple. But if you change this to above and below, this is a really interesting trick if you have a threshold. Like if I know the national average is, say, 12%, I can change that, and now I have a data-driven map that's centered around an important value, a meaningful value. And now, again, those colors are showing us a really distinct pattern, so that now anything above average is purple and anything below is red. Don't quote me on this number, I kind of chose 12, but this is a really effective way to map something in order to compare the two ends of the spectrum. And when you go into symbols, you'll notice that the ramps are all diverging. That means there's a color in the middle and then 2 different colors at the edge. So this is a really interesting technique that you can use to emphasize patterns at the edges of your data. I'm gonna go ahead and click this back just to show the high to low. Again, I'm gonna put it back to purple because I like it. And so there we go. We just explored the percent Hispanic population, but for one of the tips and tricks, again, that I'll hand you out is when I'm mapping a percent, I maybe do still want to see that total value. How many Hispanic people are living in each county? And this data set is absolutely massive, and so I'm gonna go ahead and explore down here, and I bet in the H, it says Hispanic population. So I'm learning something new, and I immediately get this interesting map. And you'll see that it automatically gave me more options based on the fact of what I chose. And I can go into the options. I see I have color options and I have size options. I'm not really thinking this size is working, right? I don't feel like this pattern is clear yet. So again, give yourself permission. Click that button, go in here, look at the data values. Yeah, it looks like there's an outlier. There's some huge county, oh, look, it's Los Angeles, that's driving this map to be doing something else. So a technique that Jennifer and I like to use, we like to drag the lower value to roughly the average. Okay, so let's say 18,000 for the lowest value, but let's go ahead and just drag this down and start to see how the pattern emerges. Okay, cities are showing up. Cities in the southern part, southwestern part of the United States are showing up. Wow. All I did was drag a few things and I immediately saw some new really interesting patterns in this data. And so I really encourage you guys to spend this 5 minutes. I mean, we didn't really just do anything crazy just now. But we just made a new interesting map by giving ourselves permission to click those buttons. Oh, I just clicked too many times out. I do want to highlight a new feature that just came out recently in ArcGIS Online. You can now add field descriptions to your fields. So if you are working with data, you know, how many times do you see the field tote pop, you know, CY? Okay, that's from shapefile days, right? We were limited to 8 characters, but then you'll notice this layer has alias names. So alias names were, you know, that little bit longer to give us more context. But now you can also add a field description in ArcGIS Online, and I can say, I want to view the description. So you can put in contextual information like this field is from the census and the vintage is 2017. And so this is nice because this is living right within the map, and so I just learned something more about my data. I just did a little bit more data exploration within smart mapping by the fact that when this data was hosted into the Living Atlas, the person who made it did me a favor and they made this field description. So that was the intro to how to work with numbers in ArcGIS Online. Oh, I'll show one more thing is the clustering and how this can help us map. So this map is showing us different types of police incidents in Philadelphia. And how many times have we made maps like this where it's a bajillion points all overlapping? This is not useful. No one could ever make a decision or even learn anything about this data other than that's a lot of colors. So clustering is really just one click. Right here next to the change style button is this blue dot and it says cluster points. So if I were to click this, it's on the fly clustering my points and it's maintaining my cartography. So the colors mean the same thing that they meant before. And I didn't have to do any analysis and I was able to immediately see a new pattern about my data. But there's also this option to cluster more or less. If I want more clustering, I can go to the right, or I can slowly move this to the left to see some emerging patterns. Okay, I'm already seeing more about my data than I did before. The size is showing me how many points are in that area, and the color is showing me the predominant value that's in that area. So I'm immediately seeing this dark blue in the downtown area. I'm seeing these oranges just on the outskirts and on the outskirts over here. And so now this is giving me more information about my data, and all I did was click clustering and slide it a little bit. This map is eons better and more understandable than the previous one. So now I'm going to hand it off to Jennifer to show us some more exciting tricks.
Yeah, so here's a map of veteran hospitals around the nation, and the U.S. government has given a score to each of the hospitals. A score of it's 1 through 5, so 1 is the worst score and 5 is the best you can get. And so I want to show you how to symbolize using the types drawing style. So it's the STAR score from 2018. And here it automatically suggests that we show it with size. So the bigger the symbol, the better the score. We can show it with counts and amounts color. We can use both. Or we can use this types unique symbols drawing style. And here we're presented with an order, a ranking of 3 is the most common. There are 56 veteran hospitals with a score of 3. And 1 is nicely the least common. So I'll rearrange the values. Look at the legend. So I just moved 5 up here. I'm going to move 4 at the top. 3, 2, 1. So that's really handy when working with the legend in your map. You can also change your labels as well. So I'm going to keep it like that. We can change the colors and the symbols. So we have these unique category colors here, and then at the very bottom we have a sequential color ramp. So that's good for things that are ranked, like 1 through 5, or predominant education level, or predominant income or age. So what I'm going to do is change the symbols. So has anyone ever uploaded their own symbol? You can create your own. I like to make mine in Illustrator, host it in ArcGIS Online or any other hosting site, and then copy and paste that URL into here. So I ended up doing that and created a map like this that shows a very clear pattern of 5s and 4s on the East Coast and 1s, 2s, and 3s on the West Coast. Really makes you wonder, what's going on with that. Huh. And so for the 5, you can also do it here too. There's a bunch of different categories you can choose from that have really great symbols. The government one is new, I believe. Yeah, these are new. And so we're currently creating a new map viewer. So right now we're looking at the map in ArcGIS Online. I'm on a team that's creating a new version of that, updated version. Right now it's a pre-alpha, but in the future, I think by September, we want to release in September, beta, this September, but we'll have these in SVG format. So right now, if I click one, add it to the map, I can't change the color of this. The only thing I can do is change the symbol size. But in the new release of the map viewer, we'll be able to change the colors of any symbol that you choose. And I can show that to you guys at the end.
I saw some little claps out there. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too.
I'm excited.
So yeah, maybe I'll do this and make it a 50. And since it's a 5, that's a good score, so I'll make it green. And you can do that for each of them. So I'm not going to sit here and do them all, but that's categories for you. It's the types, unique symbols, drawing style. These are good for categories like the crime that you showed earlier. So yeah, you can add your map to an app and share your story that way. So, shall we?
All right.
Is that me?
Yep.
Transitions are hard. Okay. So that was a good introduction to some of the basic types of drawing styles. So many of you raised your hand saying you made maps before. So this is to take us to the next level with predominance and relationship and time. So I'll share about predominance. Think of predominance mapping like you would an election map. You've got different parties, trying to win the vote. And so at the end, you want to see in each area which one had more votes, which one won. So the red and blue map is a voting map or a predominant vote map. This one on the right side is predominant education. So what's the highest education level in each county? Or in each location, what's the most common type of crop that's grown there? So you enter all the fields and it automatically finds the field with the highest value. So before, when Lisa and I first started, we would write scripts with Python to look through all the rows and columns and decipher which one was the most and add a field.
A new field,
and then
calculate
the highest. Now it's just the click of a button. So it's really cool to work with the developing team to get this in there.
Oh, and then just the size.
Oh, and we can also use size. So say we want to do the number of votes, who won, red or blue, and then by how much. Then you would have the color, and then you'd have the size, show the number of votes or the count of the votes.
Another technique that you can do in smart mapping, this was not always available, but you can choose a date field. So if you have a field that is in a date format, smart mapping will actually recognize that that's a date field and offer you a way to map that. You can either map it as over a continuous time spectrum, new, old, or you can do it by age. You can choose a date and say I have an inspection that happened and I want to know how old is it from today's date, you know? How many days ago did this happen? And so that way you can see if something is in compliance or not. And so you can easily use smart mapping to explore which inspections may not be meeting a compliance. You can also choose to add size. You can map time as size or color. So I'll show you how to do that with color in just a minute. Relationship mapping is also pretty new. It just came out last year. This is a really interesting way to compare two of your data attributes. If you have two things that you think might be related, relationship mapping is an easy way to see where the patterns are overlapping. And I want to emphasize this is not causation. It's just showing where the patterns overlap. And so if you have a pattern that's happening strongly for two different things in the same place, relationship mapping will help emphasize that on the map. If you want to see where it's maybe not happening in a place, it'll show you the low-high patterns as a grid. And that grid can help tell a story where you want usually like one of the corners of the grid to be the point of emphasis. I want that corner to tell me an interesting story because that's maybe the part of the pattern that I would like to be interested in. You can also use size, you can customize the legend, and you can make a really interesting map that tells a really cool story about two different patterns. So I'll show you this again in just a minute. It's your turn.
Can you switch me over? I'm sorry. So for arcade expressions, this is my favorite thing to show. I had a few other sessions today about it, and it's really great when you want to edit data that you don't own. You know, you go to open data, you pull in a layer, or maybe someone else from your organization's layer.
Or from the Living Atlas.
And you want it to show it in a slightly different way. We can use arcade expressions for that. It's also really good for live feeds.
Oh yeah.
So things are constantly changing, and you want to update the data on the fly. You would do so with arcade expressions. So it helps you make simple calculations. You can do complex scripts, even like if-else statements and when statements. And you can use it for symbology, your pop-ups, your labels, your rotation, your transparency, and you can use it in online and in pro. So it's a really powerful tool that's very easy to learn. So we'll give some demos about that.
Yeah, and so.
Is it JavaScript only, or is it?
It's a new language. So it's called Arcade Expressions, and it's very similar to Excel. So in Excel, when you say equal sum, parentheses, all those fields, it's just like that. Think about your layer having different attributes or different fields.
And Arcade is built on top of JavaScript, so you'll notice that the syntax it is similar. You create variables the same way. If-else statement logic is very similar. So that's a great question. All right.
So this is a map that shows, we want to make a map that shows commute alternatives. So if you're not going to drive alone to work, what's the most common or predominant, this is a predominance map, what's the most common way people are getting to work if they're not going to drive alone? So the green areas, people are, if they're not going to drive alone, they're most likely going to walk to work. And we can click on the map and see how drastic of a difference that is, see what the patterns are. The blue areas are taking the bus, red is carpooling, yellow is biking. And so I want to show you how to make a map like this. So you go into Smart Mapping, and then you simply click on the drop-down arrow and find the field that you're interested in. So I'm interested in workers who carpooled, and Smart Mapping is looking at the layer, the field you selected, suggesting a way to draw it. Workers who biked. Let's do workers who walked, and so on and so forth. You can add up to 10 different fields. If you want more, you can use Arcade Expressions to use as many fields as you want. So here's just a really simple look just to show what predominance can do. It automatically, once you add 3 or more, it automatically chooses either predominance or relationship as the only styles available to show 3 fields or more. So we can show it as a polygon fill, like we see here, or we can choose predominant category and size. So remember when I zoomed in and you saw those symbols of the people walking in the bus and they were all different sizes? That's how I did it. I went into here and changed the size this way. So, you know, like what Lisa said, we move the average down for the bottom value, and we move the top value. We can zoom in to get a better view of the histogram, and hit OK. And so to change the actual symbols, remember this? It looks like the types one that I just showed. Predominance also works with your categories. All right. So that's all I want to show with predominance. Time?
Yeah. Oh, bear with me. I want to duplicate my screen. There we go. Again, like I mentioned, if you have a field that is a time field, smart mapping can help you also explore patterns in that way. So again, here we have, we're in the smart mapping, and these are building footprints in Rotterdam. And there's a field in here called year built. And so I'd be interested to learn about how old the structures are within this city. So I can easily select year built, and it's automatically going to recognize these are time fields and give me continuous time options, and again, the age options. If I have a specific point in time, I want to know how old something is. But I'm going to go ahead and explore what's going on in here by giving myself permission to click this button. I'll say it 1,000,000 times. Right now, this map is a little hard to read because I want imagery, so I don't think this is the map I want quite yet. So I can go into symbols and maybe try some of the other color ramps. You know, what might work well on imagery? Well, so maybe a brighter color like a blue. So I can quickly choose that. Okay, I think we're getting there. I see there's by default a lot of transparency on this layer. I can take that off. Okay. A pattern is starting to emerge. I'm immediately seeing these darker buildings are much newer, and the lighter buildings are the older ones. I'm immediately seeing a pattern on this side of the town, you know, by simply clicking the field and giving myself permission. But what's interesting, if you have some contextual information, you can go even further. So for this example, something happened in Rotterdam on May 14th, 1940. And so that changed the landscape of the city. So it'd be interesting to see what that date in particular can tell us about this data. Let's explore that pattern. So the same way we had high to low themes, there's new to old and before and after for time fields. So I can choose before and after, and it's automatically going to center this on the average year built date. But I want to make this, say, May 14th, 1940. Now my map has more meaning. Now I can immediately see anything in blue was built after that event that occurred. And so those were things that might have been rebuilt, or maybe that's the part of the city that was new and emerging, and we can see pre-war was these green buildings. And again, that's a little hard to see, so I'm going to go ahead and go into symbols and choose something with a little bit more of a distinct pattern, just to see if that pattern emerges a little bit more. Okay, I know it's a little bright in this room, and that might be a little hard to see, but on my screen, this is really interesting.
Yeah, we can change the base map.
Thank you for giving me permission to change the base map. That was a good point. So now this is a little bit easier to read. So here we go. This is an iterative process. Again, we just spent a few minutes, clicked a few buttons. Now we have a map that really has a pattern that's telling us something interesting about our data. And that's one way to explore your data with time. Now I'm going to show you relationship mapping. So this used to be called bivariate mapping. Well, I guess it still is called bivariate mapping. But this has been done for a long time. And we have a teammate, Aileen Buckley, who's an incredible cartographer. And she told me, Oh, it used to take me a week to build a bivariate map in ArcMap. You know, you would have to process the data, kind of like she was saying with predominance. You have to calculate the fields, do all this stuff, and then you hope there's a pattern, right? You get through that whole process and you hope there's a pattern in that data. And if there's not, so now this is literally clicks, and you're going to be able to compare two different attributes in your data. And so here we have hurricane paths in the oceans. And we immediately are seeing where they're going, but it'd be interesting to explore factors that are relevant to hurricanes. So I'm going to go into change style, and I'm going to explore maybe the speed, because it would make sense that hurricanes are strongest when they're the fastest, when the wind speed is high. So, you know, I'm not liking size. I'll change this to color. Okay. That's telling me something. I see dark blue in the ocean. That makes sense. It's probably the strongest in the middle. As it builds up, gets strong, dies off. You know, maybe I don't like that ramp. I'll try green instead. That might be a little easier to read. I mean, I feel like I'm learning something about how speed and hurricanes are related. I can also see how pressure is related, because pressure is a distinct pattern that defines how strong a hurricane is. And so by clicking this, hurricanes are actually the strongest when the pressure is the lowest. So in this case, I chose to map it by color, and I'm seeing, oh, that's kind of a similar pattern to what speed was. So relationship mapping can help me go, oh, are those related? That would be interesting to see. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the speed and add a field and choose the pressure. And it's going to offer me down here the relationship option. And I can click select. And I immediately am seeing where the patterns are high and low, where speed and pressure are related on this map. But again, we're not going to take this default map. This is not good enough. We want this to be better and stronger. We want to learn something new about this data. And we can go into this interface to do that. So in this case, high and high is not the exact pattern that I want to emphasize. I actually want to see where speed is the highest and pressure is the lowest. So I actually want to emphasize high-low patterns. So this focus, all this is doing, if you watch the legend, rotates it, so that whoever your map audience is will immediately have their eyes drawn to the top value. So they're going to see, oh, that blue value is the area of interest that I want to see. So just a small little thing. We had a little bit of knowledge about the data in this case, and that can just help make the map a little bit more clear. We can choose the grid size. You can choose to do it by 2 by 2, 3 by 3, or 4 by 4. We tend to use 3 by 3 because it gives enough color in the map where it tells a clear story, but sometimes 4 by 4 or 2 by 2 can either be too many colors on the map, or maybe you're not stratifying the data enough to show a really meaningful pattern. So I like to stick to 3 by 3. And by default, it does quantile. And the reason for that is that quantile has historically been the method for bivariate mapping because it puts the most colors on the map. And while this is a good way to explore the data, we're going to use a little bit of knowledge and put our own knowledge into this map to make it more meaningful. I want to see where hurricanes are the strongest. Where are they category 3 or higher? I actually looked up on the NOAA website, okay, what wind and pressure is defined by what category it is. And using those data values, I'm going to go back to my map and learn more about where these are stronger than category 3 or more. And to do that, to change the map, you simply drop this down, and here's where we're going to put in the numbers that are meaningful to us. So I know that it's category 3 or above with speeds of 96. I have these written down, by the way, I don't have these memorized. And it's lower than category 1 with 64. So immediately, it's a very small change, but now this is a knowledge-driven map. This is more meaningful than it was before because these numbers are based in science. These are based from NOAA. And again, we'll do the same thing with pressure. Those numbers are in fact 980. and 950. And we quickly made this change, and now we know that all the areas in blue, those are the hurricanes that were category 3, and that's where those, and you can see where along the line the pressure was the lowest and the speed was the highest, and so this is giving us more information. But this map still isn't necessarily super clear. Someone has to decipher this legend. So you can go one step further and you can change how this is labeled. You can say category 3 or higher strong hurricane, and you can make it so that now when your map reader gets this, they know what that blue value means. And just small little changes like that can really help the impact of your map for your end reader, because not everyone is a map reader. Not everyone is a data nerd like us. So that's a quick way to change that symbology.
Can you use the expressions to change the, like, more than, let's say, 4 by 4, like 5 by 5 or something like that?
The question was, can you use an arcade expression to make it more like 4 by 4 or 5 by 5? And as far as I know, the answer is no to that. And correct me if I'm wrong, what I know is that arcade, or this relationship mapping is actually built on, in the background, deep in the background, is actually using an arcade statement. But it's built just with these specifications, 3, 4, and 5. But the truth is, a 5 by 5, that's a lot of colors in the map. Any more than 10, and our eyes start to struggle to decipher. And so a rule of thumb, if you notice with predominance mapping, 10 was the max. It's because as humans, we start to struggle to see distinctions between 10. So go ahead and not do that.
You do not have permission to do that. All right, so the fun part, well, it's all fun.
Yeah, they're all fun.
Arcade expressions lets you do many things, and one simple example is unit conversions. So if you were in any of my previous arcade expression demos, I apologize for the repeat, but I added an additional example that I haven't shown at the UC yet, so just to change things up. Yeah, so if we want to change this, say, for example, you are in Berlin. Anyone here from outside the US? Yeah, where are you guys
got
from?
a few.
Where are you from? Jordan, welcome. I saw a hand over here. Yeah? Canada.
Oh, welcome.
Awesome. Well, I'm guessing you guys use meters and not feet. This is a live feed of the height of the stream. And we have this data from the Living Atlas all over the world. But we had a lot of our customers saying, can we change the pop-up? And before we couldn't. Well, first of all, it wasn't a feature layer, now it is. But now we have Arcade, and they can do it. So I'll show you how to do that. You go to Configure Popup, and you add an attribute expression. And here we see the expression builder. And you can add a title. This is what will be the title of your legend. So height in meters. And then the globals tab is where all the fields are in your layer. So we've got our height somewhere over here. And if we test it, we can see that the height field is a number. It could be type string, it could be type date or a number, and the result. So this is the dummy value. Say we made the dummy value 10, and then we did something in the builder. We said plus 10, for example. Then it makes it 20. So it's doing this all on the fly, all in the browser. If we multiply it by 0.3048, then that gives us it in meters. Hit OK, and I'll add it to the pop-up. So when you configure your pop-up, you can add fields in it. And if you scroll to the very bottom of the field selection, you'll see the expression that you created. So this one is 7.05. I hit OK, and now it's shown as 2.15, immediate unit conversion on the fly. When the data updates in an hour, that's going to update as well. There's no hard coding required. All right, here's an example of change in forest area. For the countries that did have data, they're shown on the map. And I want to show, maybe you can show what the forest cover looked like in 2015. So there's a lot of forest cover here. Maybe we can use size. We're just exploring the data. And there, we can see it in 1990. However, there isn't a field that has the difference in the two values. So before we would say, can I download the data? Can you make us be able to export it? But now we don't have to do that. We can add an expression here for the symbology. So if you click on the attribute and scroll to the very bottom and hit new expression, we can create a variable called change. And we'll select 2015 minus 1990. All right. If you return change, you see the difference. But I want to create a statement that converts numbers into categories. So when, or if else, if the change was greater than 0, then there's a gain in forest area. When the change or the difference is less than 0, there's a loss. For all other values, for 0, we say null. Or no, we can even say no change. And hit OK. All right, so now we've just converted these numbers into meaningful categories. The red areas had a gain in forest, and the blue areas had a loss. Now, I want to show this by size. So to do color and size, you have to add 2 attributes. So the second attribute will be the difference. And what's nice is it remembers everything you typed. So if you go to the existing tab, and I think it's this one, that's the one we just did. So I didn't have to go and copy and paste. It's already there for me. But the difference is I want to just show the change, or the difference. And then, there's negative values. I forgot to remove the negative values. So the way we can do that is by looking at all the different functions that are available. Absolute value is one of them. So right now we can go into here and say absolute value of change, hit OK, and those negative values will disappear. And that's better. And then later on, you can go down and move this slider and maybe move this one up towards the average and get a better map like this. So I went in and added different symbols. So this is the final map that shows a different story of deforestation. Sometimes we hear the doom and gloom. Brazil has experienced a 10% loss in forest, but then you look over here in China, and there was a 33% gain. They both lost and gained the same amount. And then there's the positive side of the story here in green. So notice how also the pop-up color matched the symbol. So red here, green here. And you can do that with arcade expressions as well. So let's see what we did with that. Yeah, so say here we've got % increase. So it returns the value, and then we go into here and look at the HTML of the pop-up. And instead of using a hex value, it would say font the expression.
So actually, if you guys are familiar with ArcGIS blogs, I actually have a blog that explains how to do that exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So if you want to use that technique, there's a blog that shows you how to do what she just showed.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources, blogs, videos, articles. So the last one I'll show you is scooter locations. Anyone ride a scooter here in San Diego?
See them all over the
Okay,
sidewalk.
I flipped over one last year and I still have scars from it, so I'm not riding a scooter this year. So what I want to do is create an expression that looks at the battery level of these scooters. And I want to go out and say, let's create it real quick. Let's say variable charge equals this battery level. So in the dummy variable, it's a null value, so we can change it to maybe 90. Test it. Oh, This is good. So variable charge returns nothing because I just made a variable. I didn't return anything. You have to say charge underneath for some value to come out. Now, this is a string, right? So if I wanted to symbolize this by battery, it's not going to recognize it as a number, and we're going to get types, and that's very frustrating. So the way we deal with that is by converting, using Arcade, strings to numbers, and vice versa. So variable charge equals number function. And if you're curious about the functions, number, you just find it and then click on the I, and it tells you all about it. Another great thing is, say you want to maybe do a buffer. You click on it and it tells you what to fill in. So it gives you instructions on how to use these functions. All right, so var number of the battery, and we return charge, and we get a number type. So very useful in many cases. So when the charge is less than 50, we'll say charge immediately. And then when the charge is greater than or equal to 50, okay, so then this means or, the two lines going up, and this means and. So when it's greater than 50 and it's less than 90, charge when possible. And lastly, fully charged. All else fully charged. And test it. So if we change the dummy value to like 1% battery, it returns charge immediately. So now we have the 3 different categories. So I went in and changed the symbols. So if you worked for the city and you're in charge of going around and charging these scooters, you would know to go to these red ones first and then to the other ones later. So before we move on to tips and tricks, I'd like to give a big reveal of the new map viewer. This is very, very alpha. This is my testing environment. But when you get access to it, you sign in. And then we find a layer. So we can add that county health rankings layer from the Living Atlas. All the app stuff is on the left side, and then all the symbolization stuff is on the right side. So county health, we can change the base map to the dark gray. It's dramatic. Let's see, did it add? There we go. I like this human geography base map because it puts the streets over your layers. So if you had something like this, the county's on top, but if you use the human geography dark or light base map, now you have a better reference. The roads and the labels are on top of your layer, which is really nice.
And you can find the human geography base map in the Living Atlas.
Everything's in the Living Atlas.
Everything's in the Living Atlas. There's also a blog about how to use it if you want to figure out how to build that into your own maps. There's a blog about the human geography base map.
Yeah. So in the new map viewer, we support grouping layers. So that's something a lot of people have been asking for. And here's the change style. So if we do something like, I want a count of some sort. Let's see, what's a good one?
Maybe obesity.
Obesity, where's that?
Adult obesity, so it'd be A. Right? Yeah.
Oh, it's not in alphabetical order. I'm going to bring that back to the team. I want to find something interesting.
Drinking water. Drinking water violation.
Where's that?
Just put it out.
Down.
You're like right there.
Teamwork.
Drinking water violations. Maybe there aren't any.
We're exploring.
Right. Let's do... Oh, here we go. Okay. So we have dot density as a new drawing style. So that's only available in Pro right now, and the only way to use it is by creating in Pro and then publishing it as a vector tile cache. So now we can do it in the new map viewer. So I will show that to you guys later, because right now they're still developing it. Oh, yeah, it's working. All right. And then it's very similar to Predominance. So you can add multiple fields. So say this map does not make any sense because I'm choosing random fields. Well, let's just pick it just because it's a number. And it has this blending option. So once we get both on the screen, there'll be red and then there'll be blue. And when there's a pretty even number for both of them, it's going to blend it and make it purple. Or if it's red and yellow, it's going to blend it to make it orange. So right now, this blue value is a lot higher than the other one. So you'd want to pick something like white, Asian, black, some things that are more related than life expectancy and premature death denominator. So I'll get something ready to show you guys, and you can do some tips and tricks, and I'll find something cool.
Yeah, let me wrap it up. So one tip that we like to emphasize a lot is an easy way to make your maps more clear when you're working in smart mapping is to just please make those outlines not dark, gray, thick lines on your map. Because if you look at this map on the bottom left, I'm looking a lot at the area in the middle because it's brown, even though the values there's not really a pattern there. This example just uses a lighter color. This is light gray. The pattern is starting to emerge, starting to see a little bit more about this, or be really bold. Get rid of those. Look at that pattern. That is way more distinct than that bottom left one. That bottom left one was like lines. I see lines. This one on the top is like, oh, look at the purple in that map. That's a significant pattern that I might be interested in. And on that topic of transparency is a really effective way to make your maps more clear. If you do in fact want to see more about what's behind your map, if you have terrain, for example, go ahead and try adding some transparency. Show that pattern behind, use the data to your advantage, use that base map to your advantage. And you can also use data values to determine the transparency value. So that Florida traffic example Jennifer showed in the beginning, that used a technique where the highest average annual daily traffic values were emphasized because they had zero transparency, but the lower values had more transparency. So instead of a bunch of lines on a map, you get the emphasis on those higher values. And so you can use transparency as a way to also explore your data. In that interface, you'll also get the histogram. And this tip she stole from me. This is the human geography base map. When you find these 3 layers in the Living Atlas, you'll find them as 3 layers: base, detail, and labels. So usually base maps are essentially the base and then the labels end up on top of your data. When you throw these into your map, layer them base, detail, label, but make the detail and the label reference layers, and they'll end up on top of your map. So if you're making a choropleth map like she was showing, you can now see reference for like freeways and buildings. And this is a really easy way to add context to your map that can help people understand what they're seeing, because most people want to know, well, where's the 10 freeway? I know where I live because I live next to, people in Northern California would say 10 freeway. Not the 10 freeway. And so that's just a really quick way to show that.
We can switch it over real quick.
Jennifer has
I found a more interesting example. We can show white population and then Asian population, for example, in San Francisco. And here each dot represents 20 people. Or we can slide the slider over, 1 dot equals 1 person. Probably wouldn't do that. Right now the red is on top of the blue, but if we turn on blending, then we see where there's a mix of both white and Asian populations. And we can also add more. We can add the black African American population. And we can, again, do up to 10 different categories. And there's lots of nice colors to choose from. Yeah, like the blue and the yellow. So this is we're very excited about this. And then the last part that's new is this filtering option. So say we want to filter total population in that block is greater than, now we have a histogram. And instead of creating the filter and hitting OK and looking at the map, right now it's all done in this view, automatically on the fly.
That's cool.
Yeah. So.
All right, and I know that we're wrapping up time-wise, and so we're going to end with, there are a lot of resources out there. If you go to the Smart Mapping website, if you just Google the term Esri Smart Mapping, there's a ton of resources on there. We have a whole set of story maps called How to Smart Map, and these are kind of step-by-step tutorials about how you might use these methods that we showed you today, how you might explore your data using the different color and size, so on and so forth. I think there's one for every single one of them. So depending on what you want to map, these story map tutorials are extremely helpful. Also, please feel free to explore the blogs. Again, we'll say it a lot, this is a chance for Esri employees to share with you guys, hey, this is how I would do it. Here's some, here's some information that I think you might know or want to know. And so the blogs are full of really valuable stuff. And so if you just type in the phrase smart mapping, you'll actually get a ton of different things. I even have a blog that I wrote called 6 Easy Ways to Improve Your Maps. The very first tip, I'm pretty sure, is make your outlines thinner. So that's a fun one to just explore, really, really small things that you can do to change your map that can make the impact of your map a lot more.
And there's lots of learn.arcgis.com learn lessons on smart mapping. That's another great one, step-by-step instructions and on how to do it.
Yeah, and so when these proceedings come out, you will be able to actually click those links. I realize now this is not very helpful to you. But so this is something, when you guys have gone home and digested, check out some of these resources. Definitely please give us your feedback on the app. We are always looking to improve the conference and our presentations. If there was something that we didn't show that you thought we might be showing or you'd like to see, let us know. If you thought we did an awesome job, also let us know, because we really do go back and read these, and we appreciate your feedback. And I know that we are 2 minutes over now, so are there any burning questions?
Yeah, so now that we have permission to explore these beautiful maps, at the end of the day, we most of the time have to print it out. How do we get it out on a D-size sheet or even wall-size paper map?
So the question was, so now that we were given permission to explore in smart mapping in ArcGIS Online, what if you have to print that map? That's a great question. I know that the technique that I would probably use is to explore the data in smart mapping in ArcGIS Online, and then because ArcGIS Online and Pro are friends, you can then open that web map in Pro, and you should be able to have all of your normal print options for sizing and whatnot. That's what I would do.
We use Pro to do the screenshots for the maps of the plenary that you saw in the background, and we did like 40 feet by 40 feet exports that took all weekend to export. So it can be as big as you need, and still be very clear. Yeah.
Great question. We have one over here.
The new map types like relationship mapping, things like that, when is that going to be in ArcGIS Enterprise?
So the question was, when are the mapping styles, the newer ones like relationship mapping, going to be in Enterprise? And my understanding is that it should already be there.
So it's 10.7.
10.7, yes.
Soon.
Soon.
It's usually 6 months behind.
All right, gray jacket. Yep.
In ArcGIS Online, I have my district boundary, and then I like some of the layers from that gives you all the tapestry layers.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to limit it so that you can only see our district or maybe our district and then 1 mile buffer or something, or do I just have to see the whole tapestry?
So the question was, if I have a bunch of districts in a map, how do I make it focused to my district if I'm mapping something like tapestry? Filters are a really good way to do that. Do you have any suggestion?
Can you do a spatial filter?
A spatial filter, what you can do is you can go into the analysis tools and run an analysis, and it'll create a new layer that's specific to an area. It's not necessarily exactly a spatial selection, but it's an analysis tool that will essentially do the same thing. I think it's called, don't quote me because I don't actually know exactly what it's called, but it's not called that, but you can essentially do something along those lines as far as I know.
That's the direction.
Yeah.
What I like to do is add the tapestry layer underneath, and then on top, create my own mask using a different layer, like a county layer, and use a filter
That's a good
saying,
technique.
show all counties except for the one that you're interested in. So there'll be a hole in the map, and you'll see it'll be a window into the tapestry
Yeah.
beneath.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Good one.
Also, we can, if you can create an application that you can just filter and you can use it.
We're all helping each other.
How? Yeah, so if you
The
switch
question
it over
was,
to-
sorry for
Yeah, you
the
can
recording.
say
The question was, how do I host my own symbols to ArcGIS Online? And
Yeah, so you add an item from your computer, and you choose the file. So any image file will do, and then
yeah, just an image.
.png,
Yeah,
or
PNG, JPEG.
Yeah.
Jinx. We hang out too much.
Okay, and then they're just there, you can access them, how do you call them in your map?
You call it as the URL. So when you publish this, yeah. So when you're in Smart Mapping, you actually, you add when you're in the interface, there's a spot to put the URL, and you just paste it right there.
You added it as an item, it's got a URL.
Yes, it'll be on the item description page for the item. And it has to be shared. So once you share it at the bottom right, it'll say URL, and you can just copy that. Yes. Boom. Any more burning questions?
Yes, new map viewer.
What about it?
What?
What did you say?
What's the new map?
Oh, when is the new map viewer going to be released? Our goal is this September for beta release. And then hopefully by next year it'll be completely general availability. But it could be November, depending on, we're all going on vacation after the UC. So.
Is that new map viewer the JavaScript 4.x?
That's why it's so fast and very responsive and clear. And that's why we can change the vector symbols in the symbols. Yeah.
Great question.
This is where you would share the image that you uploaded. And at the bottom, there's a URL you can copy and paste. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, guys, have a great time
Thank
at the
you.
party.
Have fun.
Thank you for joining us at Esri UC.